The cannons fire. The military band plays. Two of the world's most powerful leaders stand side by side in the heart of Beijing. But this is not just ceremony. This is strategy. On May 20th, Chinese President Xi Jinping welcomed Russian President Vladimir Putin to the Great Hall of the People for the 25th time. Yes, 25 visits. In modern diplomacy, that kind of frequency is almost unheard of. So here's the real question. What keeps bringing Putin back to Beijing? And more importantly, what are China and Russia building together? To understand this moment, you have to look beyond the perfectly choreographed, the honor guards, the 21-gun salute, the formal smiles. Because behind all of it lies a partnership that is quietly reshaping the global order. At the center of this visit is one critical decision: China and Russia agreed to extend their treaty of good neighborliness and friendly cooperation. That might sound like diplomatic routine, but it's not. This treaty is the backbone of their relationship. Signed 25 years ago, it legally binds the two countries to long-term cooperation. By extending it, both sides are sending a very clear message: this partnership is not temporary, not opportunistic, and not fragile. It is built to last. Xi Jinping described the relationship as one of unshakable political trust and deep strategic coordination. And if you look at the past 30 years, that claim holds weight. China and Russia have transformed their ties from cautious coexistence into a full-spectrum partnership covering energy, trade, technology, security, and even culture. And yet, both leaders repeatedly emphasized one key point: their cooperation is not directed at any third party. That line is worth paying attention to. Because from Washington to Brussels, many see this relationship very differently, as a counterweight, or even a challenge, to Western influence. But Beijing and Moscow frame it another way. They call it a stabilizing force in a chaotic world. So who's right? The answer depends on how you see the future of global power. Because what China and Russia are really advocating is a shift, a move away from a world dominated by a single superpower, toward what they call a multipolarity. In simple terms, more centers of power, more voices at the table. During this visit, both sides issued a joint statement supporting a multipolar world and a new type of international relations. These are not just slogans. They reflect a long-term ambition to reshape how the world is governed. And they're not doing it alone. From BRICS to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, China and Russia are building networks of cooperation that extend far beyond their borders. They are actively reaching out to developing countries, the so-called Global South, offering an alternative vision of global leadership. To some, this looks like balance and fairness. To others, it looks like competition. Either way, it is changing the game. But this partnership isn't just about big ideas. It's also deeply practical. Trade between China and Russia has now exceeded $200 billion for 3 consecutive years, and it's still growing. Energy remains the backbone, with Russia supplying oil and gas to power China's massive economy. At the same time, both countries are expanding into new areas: technology, infrastructure, logistics, and innovation. Xi Jinping even highlighted the need to develop what he called new quality productive forces, essentially, the next generation of economic growth driven by advanced technology. For Russia, especially under economic pressure, this partnership offers both stability and opportunity. And then there's something less obvious, but just as important. People. One of the key outcomes of this visit is the launch of the China-Russia Education Year. That means more student exchanges, more joint research, more academic cooperation. It might not grab headlines like military deals or trade numbers, but in the long run, it could matter even more. Because relationships between countries don't just depend on leaders. They depend on generations. By investing in education and cultural exchange, China and Russia are trying to ensure that their partnership doesn't just survive, but evolves. Of course, all of this is happening against a very complicated global backdrop. Conflicts in the Middle East. Ongoing tensions in Europe. Rising economic uncertainty. Increasing divisions between major powers. In this environment, Xi and Putin are positioning their partnership as something rare, a source of stability. They both criticized unilateralism and what they see as hegemonic behavior. They called for a stronger role for the United Nations and emphasized the importance of international law. They also sent a clear signal on history, opposing any attempt to reinterpret the outcomes of World War II. These positions reflect a shared worldview, one that prioritizes sovereignty, balance, and resistance to external pressure. Now, whether you agree with that worldview or not is a different question. But you can't ignore it. Because it is shaping real decisions, real alliances, and real outcomes. So what does all of this mean for the rest of the world? First, this is not a short-term alignment. China and Russia have spent decades building this relationship, and they are planning decades ahead. Second, this is not a narrow partnership. It touches almost every aspect of national power: political, economic, technological, and cultural. Third, its impact is global. From energy markets to international institutions, the ripple effects are everywhere. And finally, it reflects a deeper transformation. The world is no longer moving in a straight line. It's becoming more complex, more fragmented, and more competitive. And right at the center of that transformation, standing side by side in Beijing, are China and Russia. The ceremony may last a few hours. But the strategy behind it? That's built for decades. And the real story is only just beginning.